ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here for another edition of Oilers Live Tuesday. My guest tonight is Dash in the Park. Guest almost every Tuesday, it seems, of late. Happy to have you, though. Welcome. Lots going on in the NHL in terms of trade talk. Lots going on with the Oilers as they continue the fight in a very close playoff race. I think we got our talk tracks tonight. Lots to talk about. How are you doing, Dash?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be your favorite guest.
I think I said, I probably said that like 10 times today. I'm sure I did.
Associate co-host.
You bet.
Doing good, buddy. I feel bad. Dursa keeps texting me on the weekend saying I want a podcast and we should do another straight off the pipe. And I just whatever happened to my weekends in the last little bit. I don't know what it is. Like my kid turned 3, started skating lessons, and obviously he's going to be in the NHL now. So you're just right. Like the weekends,
that's exactly it.
Right? Blown right up. Tuesdays just happen to be available. So,
oh man, well,
podcasting with you means we won't talk about basketball.
That's right. Happy to have you, though. And, I think it's always a pretty good conversation. Chat is now open, mostly YouTube chat. So if you're around, feel free to tune in. We do look at that and comment when possible. And if you're on Twitter, just, tweet something on the show or whichever. We'll get that hashtag Oilers Live or just tag me at Oilers Live. Welcome, everybody. We're here. Talk Tuesday is, it's trading season in the NHL. And if you're on Twitter, which I know a lot of you are that tune in, you might be like me and you hate that every day that I open up the Twitter app, Chychrun is trending and absolutely nothing has happened. I asked the question the other day in the Heavy Hockey group chat, if Chychrun wasn't an annual trade discussion, would anybody know Arizona exists? In the NHL, it's like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around, it doesn't make a sound.
You would because of Vejmelka.
I know, I do. I like Vejmelka. Hey, look, I'm happy to hear that for the first time that LA trade looks like it's not going anywhere, at least for the time being, and only because Vejmelka was involved. I think, we'll get it. Let's get right into this. Let's talk about trades and where the Oilers.
As long as we don't have to talk about that last game.
Yeah, we can. Well, we'll get into that as well. So lots to talk about in terms of the Oilers. In the top left corner, you'll see a little QR code. That's to donate to SACE and the Heavy Hockey Showdown. SACE is the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. We'd love your donations if you could. We've got a pretty lofty goal of total of $25,000, but we want to do at least $10,000 in donations prior to the event itself. So let's get that done, and hopefully if you can do $5, $10, $15, whatever it is, $25 gets you a tax receipt, I believe is the minimum. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's $10. I don't know. But anyway, whatever you can. If you can help out, help out. Now let's talk some hockey. Trade discussion. Let's start with Chychrun, which it sounds like that one's going a little bit south or has already gone south. Seemed to heat up there for a little while. I want to point out that our very own Ryan Lotzberg did an article, over a month ago now, Dash?
Yeah, about there. 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 weeks ago. Basically said that Chychrun was not a viable trade target for the Oilers, not because of Chychrun, but more because of the salary cap situation in Edmonton and the likelihood of what Arizona's going to want back. So that looks to be exactly what's happened there, that it's died down a little bit. I guess the question, I'll have to anybody who's tuning in and you, Dash, is let's talk about Chychrun first. Is this the guy? And if it is the guy, what's it worth to the Oilers? Is it worth Broberg, which seems to be the ask, or sounds like is the ask? Broberg and potentially a couple of firsts and maybe a second. I already know your answer, but let's say it on the record again.
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about it. I've never wanted Chychrun, and it's to summarize, it's more of what we already have. I know that's a great value contract. I know that having a player of that caliber on our team is something that's going to improve the on ice product. The key being there when he's on the ice, and I think it's a pretty well-known statistic now that he's played been injured for 4 out of every 10 games in his career. And I just, have that aching gut feeling that for that type of price, where you're giving up 2 or potentially 3 first-round picks, right? If that's got to be Broberg. What was the trade? Broberg, 2023 first and Puljujarvi.
And possibly 2 firsts, I think, was initially discussed. 2 firsts and a second at one point, I'd heard.
Right.
So here's my question to you, because this
is the opportunity cost. I like the player. I just don't want to give that up.
Yeah, and we've been getting into it on the group chat. Is Chychrun the difference maker that everybody's in oil country is saying he is? I mean, there's a lot of folks that seem to indicate that if LA gets Chychrun, they're immediately a Stanley Cup contender. Do you think that's true?
No.
I mean, that to me is the big thing. I mean, we're not talking Pronger here, right? Like this is Jacob Chychrun. He's a hell of a hockey player, but in my mind, a middle tier top pairing D-man, right? Like he can be a top pairing guy in a middle tier team, but he's not in the upper echelon, which in my mind doesn't make him a difference maker. It makes a difference on the Oilers, who could use some players, legitimate defensemen to fill in some of the minutes. I think Darnell Nurse is being overutilized with, but I don't think he's the be all and end all. And then I don't know, do we want a guy that we can't trust for the 2 or 3 years in terms of staying healthy? And the Oilers are, I've said this before, they're the most injured team in the league. It's every single year. Like I think it has a lot to do with climate, probably has some to do with travel schedule, and they've got a lot to do in that regard. But that's not going to change. And you bring in a guy that's already known for injuries. I mean, I don't think it bodes well. We've got Jeff Crest. Hopefully I said your name right. Is Chychrun is a salary cap problem. How are we involved with the Karlsson situation? And that's a good segue into Karlsson. So first off, because we haven't talked about this, so I haven't actually got your feelings on it. What is your thought on Karlsson? Is he the answer? Is he the piece that's going to get our team, the Oilers, over the top? Or, is this kind of just like a pipe dream? And what are your thoughts on this?
Erik Karlsson's the closest thing to a difference maker that we can acquire, right? Of all the acquirable assets that are out there that play the position of defense, Erik Karlsson's the biggest difference maker, right?
Yeah,
Chychrun's
absolutely.
Chychrun doesn't even make that top 5, maybe.
Now, I mean, we're talking injuries with Chychrun. What's the difference there? I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I think in terms of I would love to see Karlsson on this team. I guess the biggest question is, I mean, this is one of the few years he's played a full season in a while, or continued to play. Season's not over yet. Still another 28 games for him left. But he's killing it. He's 73 points in 54 games. He's doing what was expected of Karlsson when he went to San Jose. He's getting the job done. He's 25 minutes of ice time a game. I think that's right up there with Darnell Nurse, if I'm not mistaken, is in the top ice time leaders, closing in on 20 goals. I mean, that's to me, right? Like, that's a guy that you want on your team. Is it worth what seems to be the asking price? This is according to Bob Stauffer, a 2023 first round draft pick. Bouchard, Xavier Bourgault, Tyson Barrie, and another roster player. And as Shane Gavreau says on YouTube, would have to be a 3-team deal to work, I would think. So which is quite possible. Who was it? One of the, I think TSN analysts suggested it might be or maybe it was Friedman, said it might be the biggest deal, one of the biggest deals ever, or most complicated deals ever. Is it worth all of that? Do you think to make a go for it? I mean, I'll tell you my thought, and then you can respond.
Sure.
I think so. I think Karlsson, if you put him side by side with Chychrun, you got two guys both have injury history, but Karlsson's he's got a better pedigree, and the only reason that you need to fear Karlsson is the contract, and obviously that's going to be there's got to be some retainment there for it to work anyway, so it'll all work within the salary cap guidelines. He's another guy that you got to think at 73 or 74 points this year. What's he on path for? He's on path for over 100 points, I suspect. Even if he does go backwards a little bit, regress a little bit. Look, this is a great player. He's made some of the most beautiful passes I've ever seen. Everybody's worried about Draisaitl and McDavid hoping to get out of here somewhere. They clearly like the guy. They were playing with him at the All-Star game. The word is they've been asking for a puck mover. I think he's the guy. And if Holland can make it work, then I think that's great. But I will always go back to this, which I've been saying for every Tuesday night for a long time, this is the kind of trade Holland has never pulled off. And so I'm not surprised that it had a lot of head of steam, a couple days ago, but it's died down a little bit. So I won't believe it till it happens. I just don't think Holland's the guy to get a trade like this put together. Okay, I've said my piece. Your thoughts?
Is it realistic? Even first things first. I don't know. What is there? 1 in 5 chance this happens? Like a 1 in 10 chance this happens? That said, I don't know. Here's the thing. We need to make a difference on the back end. So does Gudas or Gavrikov or Gostisbehere move the needle enough for Michael Hebert to go, we might have a chance. Honest answer.
nobody on here is going to love my answer, because the reality is if he goes into the trade deadline, doesn't find a deal that works, I'm all right with the Oilers going into the playoffs looking like they're looking. And I don't think it's ideal, but I think, this is a season where they have about as much a shot as they did last year. And, Connor McDavid's on a whole extra level, if we ever thought it was possible this year. Leon Draisaitl, we'll talk about him later in the show. But my thing is I like all those guys. I would love to see an additional defenseman put in place, because I don't think this team is good enough on the D side to make a long run. But also, I wouldn't bet against Draisaitl and McDavid to carry this team to another conference final this season. And they're picking up steam. I know it's against the bottom half of the league, but they're picking up steam, and I like it. And we'll talk about since the All-Star break, because I don't think they've been great since then. But I think this team isn't much different than it was last year. We've got a couple of guys that I believe can go into the playoffs and make a bit of a difference. So yeah, I think if you add in
the conference final good enough though anymore? Are you happy if we make it to the conference final again?
You want honest truth? Yeah, I am. Not as I said, it's not going to be a popular take, I don't think. But yeah, I'm happy if the Oilers make it to the conference final this year. I think that's the minimum, right? In fact, to me, conference final means you're a contender.
In order for your happiness, you mean?
I want them to go to the Stanley Cup, obviously, but that's a contending team. Conference final. That's top 4 in the league. That's a contending team.
That's
what I want. Yeah, I mean, there's 1 out of 32 teams takes home the Stanley Cup, and if you're going to keep getting to the conference final, right? If you can get to the conference final year over year, if they can do it again this year, and they can make an upgrade up next year, then I think they're on their way. I think, and then if you get to the conference final, you don't know what's going to happen from there, right?
Look, if they make
that's
it to the
just the way I'm
final,
just being realistic, right? I mean, not every team is going to win the Stanley Cup. Just the way it is.
We got to win the cup. First things first. Let me just.
Well, I'm with you. I want to win the cup. But.
If we want to get to top 4 every year, that's whatever. You might as well be a Flames fan. But if we get to top 4 and we lose out in, overtime of game 6 or, game 7 of the Western Conference final, you still have to consider that progress. And whether we like that or not as Oilers fans, it's still progress. And right, not all these wonder kinds and blue chip players won their cup early in their career, right? So maybe it just comes in a few more years. All that said, you asked me about Karlsson. So look, Bouchard is up and down. If that's the key trade piece, what was it? Bouchard, Bourgault in the first. Okay. We've got half of Edmonton banging and kicking and down doors and lighting torches to get Chychrun for Puljujarvi, Broberg in a first, plus maybe another draft pick. If half the Oilers fan base wants Chychrun at that price, then quite honestly, we're crazy not to want Karlsson. So
absolutely, yeah.
Right, like here, let me just break something down for you. I went to Elite Prospects, and what I like about that website is it shows their career accomplishments at the bottom after all their stats. Jacob Chychrun career accomplishments in the NHL. I had a few in the OHL, first rookie, second All-Star. In the NHL here, it's most goals by a defenseman in 2021. The shortened season. So that's his entire NHL career accomplishments, according to Elite Prospects. Okay. And people are clamoring to give up Jesse and 2 firsts. And Broberg, who we've developed, Broberg, who we've developed and is playing fantastic lately. Let me go to Erik Karlsson's career accomplishments. By the way, I have to scroll to get through all of them. I have to read this faster. I'm going to have to stop. Most points in 2013-14, most points by a defenseman, Olympic All-Star team, Olympic best defenseman, Olympic most points by a defenseman, Olympic most points, Olympic silver medalist. In 14-15, best defenseman Norris Trophy, best defenseman Norris Trophy finalist, NHL first All-Star team, NHL most points by a defenseman. Then in 15-16, NHL All-Star game, best defenseman Norris Trophy, best Swedish player in the Viking Award, NHL first All-Star team, NHL average time on ice highest, NHL most assists by a defenseman, NHL most assists by a defenseman, NHL most points by a defenseman, Swedish player of the year at the Gold Pucken Award, 2016-17 NHL All-Star game, best defenseman Norris finalist, best Swedish player Viking Award game, first NHL All-Star game. All-Star team, NHL playoffs, best plus minus by defenseman, NHL playoffs, most assists by defenseman, NHL playoffs, most points by defenseman, and the Swedish Player of the Year award. In 17-18, he made the All-Star game. 18-19, he made the All-Star game. In 22-23, he made the All-Star game.
100%.
Did you notice a difference in that list of career accomplishments?
Yeah.
And if you have to give up 3 first-round picks for one of those players, all right, right? So I'd rather move Bouchard than Broberg, and maybe that's a whole nother topic. But I don't really want to move either one of them. What I think the difference is in between those 2 trades and those 2 players in Chychrun and Karlsson is that in the Karlsson trade, we have to give up Barrie in order to make move, right? And now full Chychrun at 4.6 or half retained or whatever it is, 40% retained on Karlsson is still $6 million, right? So you're going to get somebody to retain $5 million over 4 years. That's $20 million in real money. What does that cost to buy someone's draft picks? That's really what San Jose is doing from us here.
Absolutely, 100%. And
so Barrie's the difference for me. And I think, if in giving I don't want Chychrun period, but I think in having to do Karlsson, you have to give up Barrie, right? And so, Struddy said it in, I don't know, somewhere on the air on a podcast, right? If Barrie's a 6 out of 10 defenseman and Karlsson's a 9 out of 10 defenseman, you're not getting a 9 out of 10 defenseman. You gave up a 6, right? You improved 3.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, this,
Karlsson for 4 more years. He's 32, right? How many cups did Coffey win between 32 and 36?
Well, here's the other big
question. How many cups did Niedermeyer win between 32 and 36, right? Like this is the type of player that we would have under contract at $6 million or whatever it is for 4 more years, which in my opinion, you asked me also earlier about what's the difference in their injury history. Chychrun's always banged up. Literally on average, it's like you take 20 games, he missed 6, or he missed 4, or he missed, right? Whereas you look at Karlsson's career, it's in the NHL. His games played when he became a full-time in 11-12. 78, 74, 66, 82, 71, 82, 82, right? Like he played full seasons up until when he got hurt with that Matt Cook slicing his Achilles. So when skating's your best asset, that's, a thing to come back from. Has foot surgery right after that. And I'd say now's the time that he's probably fully actually healed again. And here
I'm going to slow you down though a little bit
talking about him like we talked about.
Here's the thing, right? Is Karlsson is great. I agree. We both agree that's the trade to be made. I think, right? We think. But Kelly's got a good point, which is, how many roster players need to be moved. Doesn't matter really. But here's the big piece. Karlsson has to agree to it on top of that. I think that's likely. Jeff says San Jose has publicly said they'll retain only 18% of that. And so here's this is why I think this is all like, it's all the question. And then the other thing is Holland the guy that can really pull off what's really needed, which is if San Jose is only willing to retain 18%, something else needs to be done. A third team needs to be brought in.
Yeah, Brad.
Mix. Who?
Brad Holland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well.
Honestly, I do think he has the capability. He's talked in the media about pulling off a three-way trade before. So if Arizona's willing to take on that other 20%, if Aid says that it's 18 and they're willing to take on another 20 or 30.
Not Aid.
Oh, sorry. It went by fast. Right? That's, I don't know. I think ultimately
my point is I don't, it's great. We're talking about it. It's great. Chychrun, I think, is off the table now. It looks like
Jeff Merrick said that the Oilers are out on Chychrun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the Oilers are out on Chychrun. I think the Oilers, if I had to guess, I think the Oilers are out on Karlsson too. I just think it's
probably,
as a lot of people have said, it's it's a complicated deal. There's a lot of hair on it. At the end of the day, too, San Jose has to decide that they want Karlsson in their division for 3 or 4 more years as well.
Oh yeah, they'll be rebuilding for 3 or 4 more years anyways. I think they're fine with that.
Could.
Here's the thing, though,
that
buddy.
Kind of a trade doesn't happen in division very often, outside of maybe Gretzky.
No, I agree. But he's got a no movement clause, and if he says I will only go to Edmonton, now what?
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter if a third team gets involved, right?
Yeah.
Because what if the reason that price is Bouchard, a first, Bourgault, and Barry, because Barry's going to Arizona?
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe they're picking up a couple million for that. So there's always a way I think you could get it done. Like I said when we started this, what is it, a 1 in 5 chance? But what I also like about the Karlsson thing is he can mentor Broberg, right? Having a couple of Swedes on the team. I think we liked what Duncan Keith did with Bush last year. So there's something similar going on there. And honestly, I think if Karlsson comes, we could probably sew up the conversation on Draisaitl leaving. Because look at how close they'll be. Look at the piece they'll have. Karlsson was talked about with Connor McDavid as the best 2 players in the world at one point in time.
Oh, Karlsson is amazing. He's been one of my favorite players for a long time.
After they went to the Stanley Cup final, I remember all the talk, and it's exactly like it was for Cale Makar last year. Look at him defend with his feet. Look at how dominant he is. Who's dominated from the back end like this? So, yeah, you know what? You've got to give up. Okay, so go back to the other theory, and you're going to get a Gostisberg,
Gavrikov.
Gudis or whatever, right? A Gavrikov. Gavrikov's ask is a first.
Yep.
Gostisberg's ask is a first or a second and a third. So if you're going to go out and get Gavrikov and Gostisberg, or if you're going to go out and get
and I'm not sold on Gostisberg.
Whatever, you're giving up a first and a second anyways. Or maybe you're giving up 2 firsts. Maybe it's a conditional first for next year. So now you've given up 2 first-round picks to get absolute rentals. Like Gavrikov's an absolute rental. He's gone at the end of the year and he ain't coming back. Whereas at least if you're going to give up 2 firsts or a first, a second, and a prospect like this, then you get a Norris Trophy winner for the next 4 years.
So Karlsson, look, there's, you talk about, I think Gostisbehere has got to be off the table. Like, I just don't think he makes the difference on this team that you want to make. I hate the fact that he's been been brought up. Chychrun, I'd rather Chychrun than Gostisbehere, but I don't think he's on the table. Gavrikov is interesting, but he's definitely on the table. drives me nuts that he is. Gavrikov's on the table. I guess McCabe is off, right? Like he's got Edmonton in his no trade or no move. Edmonton, I don't know. I mean, there's not been a lot of talk about him. What is your thought? I mean, we're talking about all this trade stuff. Let's say we get down to the trade deadline and the Oilers can't make a trade happen. Like, is that the is that where you'd hop on the Fire Holland hashtag list, or do you wait and see, or do you think we know from what we've been told that Holland's actually made some moves to try to make some moves to get a guy like Carlson. He's made an effort to try to get a guy like Chychrun, or is it a failure altogether by Holland to put together a winning team?
I mean, I don't think he had a lot of flexibility in what he could do, especially with all the LTIR space he had and his inability to make moves in the offseason because of it. Right, once Clefbaum's off the books and he's got the more flexibility at the end of this season, I think that it's not, you said it. I think McDavid and Draisaitl can, or even McDavid and Draisaitl on one leg can pull us into the Western Conference Final. I do think that. So how much longer do we want to risk Draisaitl leaving, I guess, is really what it comes down to. So some people think that's crazy talk. There's no way that those guys aren't resigning. Other people think it's crazy talk that he would want to stay in Edmonton when he can go live with his girlfriend in LA. So,
yeah, the Wayne Gretzky conundrum. Mm-hmm. We've been there before. Before.
Yeah, we recovered.
Yeah. All right. I mean, that's the trade talk, right? That's where we're at. Those are the things that are happening. Love the chat. Lots of discussion. Obviously, this is a polarizing issue in Oilers fan circles. Seemingly, I think there's a lot more folks that want the Chychrun trade done than anything. But to me, that's just that's the name everybody heard, and so they've glommed onto it. For the most part, I just don't. This is not the guy for me to, make the difference. And if, as you said, which I agree to some extent, like you're going for the cup. You're not going for the conference final. You're going for the cup. Would I be happy with the conference final this year? Hell yeah, I'd be happy with another conference final. Do I want the cup? That's what I want most, right? Like that's what I want the Oilers to win. I want the Oilers to win the cup. Call up all my Calgary Flames fan friends and tell them to eat shit and enjoy it, right? If they make it to the conference final, I'll enjoy that too. But at the end of the day, these are the players that are available. Kelly from Beer League says they'll bring somebody in. If they can't get their D-man, they'll shore up the forwards. I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't get a big name on the back end, they have to bring in a third line center.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Obviously, March 4th is a big day for a couple of reasons, and so we'll see what.
You'll be at my house on the 3rd.
That's right.
So maybe a little trade deadline epi with Dash and Bearsy side by side live in Heavy Hockey Studios.
Live in Edmonton. Live from Edmonton. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to, a couple things we want to talk about. I'm just going to mention, if you haven't seen the news, 4 players from the Moose Jaw Warriors have been indefinitely suspended. Nobody knows why yet. You can speculate all you want. One of those players happens to be Max Wanner, who had a hell of a camp for the Oilers this past season. Looked really good. It's too bad. Let's hope it's something stupid like missing curfew, although I doubt it's anything. It's got to be pretty damn serious. Hate to laugh about it, but it's got to be pretty serious. So let's hope it's not that serious. Let's talk about, one thing I want to mention while we're talking junior hockey, I am wearing my Mooseheads jersey tonight, my Mooseheads cap. I got the notification. I'm a Moosehead season ticket holder, so I got my playoff Mooseheads notification as the Halifax Mooseheads are definitely going to the playoffs this year. They just finished like a 75 days of getting at least a point in every game. Pretty phenomenal run was, geez, I should know this, but it was like 29 or 30 games. They're getting it all done. They've got no like Connor Bedard. They've got Jordan Dumais, who's a hell of a hockey player. He's not the flashiest player you ever watched, but they'll be fun to watch in the Q playoffs. They are right now sitting in the CHL top 10, listed as number 3. Quebec Remparts in the same conference in the Q are listed as number 1. So it's going to be pretty exciting if you're into junior hockey. Check that out, with your CHL app or whichever. Should be a good Memorial Cup. I mean, there's a lot of great junior teams right now, a lot of great junior players. Should be pretty exciting. So that's that. Let's talk about the Oilers right now after the All-Star break, which, when I think about, I'm talking about the Mooseheads here. When I think about the Mooseheads, they've had stretches over this crazy time of winning games and making it to overtime where they looked like absolute garbage, but they got it done. Dash, before we started the game, said, in their last 15, Oilers are 10, 2, and 3. I'll let you talk about that, but they're getting it done, right? And I would say since the All-Star break, this is some of the worst hockey we've seen from the Oilers. I'll tell you what, I think this is what makes a team a playoff team, is when you can get through these parts of your schedule where you're playing like absolute garbage and you can still get points out of it. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be, since the All-Star break, if they didn't get any points based on their style of play and how they've played, I wouldn't be surprised. But instead, they go into Ottawa and pull out a 6-3 win. Right, and then
5 out of 8 points is
that's not bad. So
when
anyway,
play like dog shit.
Like your thought on what is it that they're doing differently now to get it done versus the beginning of the season? I think if they play like they're playing now, they probably would have lost 5 straight. Thoughts?
It's the secondary scoring and the 5-on-5 scoring, I think, for sure. That's obviously getting them through the power play, being what it is, right? When you score on 1 out of every 3 power plays you get, or if it's an automatic when you get 4 power plays in a night. So I think that drags you through. The physicality started in the Los Angeles game on January 9th. I think a team bonds together. I think you start to forge a relationship where you realize that, this isn't going to be easy, given what's happening in the world. I hate to use war analogies, but it's an easy one. You look beside you at the guy in the trench and you know that he's got your back and you know that he'll take a bullet for you. You're willing to go and push that much harder. And I just think that they've, been dragged through a few games by some unlikely people like Vinny DeHarnay and the play of Fogle and some different players that have decided to pick it up a little bit. Why have they played like garbage? I'm not sure. Bouchard's look not great. Looks like he's fighting the puck. Draisaitl looks hurt to me. I actually had to go back and wanted to look, and I keep for as many of the games recorded as I can, or you can go back on YouTube and watch the little 10-minute videos. But I noticed a big difference in the way he's going into cycles, and I notice the way he's acting after face-offs when he's going into these little physical battles. I do think he's protecting something. It looks like he's you know what it reminded me of a little bit? Remember when before Puljujarvi had his hip surgery? What was that, 2 off seasons ago?
Yep.
Right. And when you don't have that drive, or you don't have that last step or that quick push, you're always reaching. Like you just kind of always, and for whatever reason, Draisaitl looks like he's been reaching a lot. Like he looks like he's been behind the play, which he's usually the guy that's ahead of the play. You know, a couple of his back checks have been just garbage, and there was, you know, in big points and times in the game, right? Like, what did he dog that one at? Was it 5-3 or something like that? Yeah. The 5-3 goal, or, you know, like they were still in that game, right? And that's the other thing I was talking about is Bouchard. Man, his mistakes just seem to be. He's Koskinen-ish in that his mistakes always seem to cost you, and it's always at the wrong time, right? Like it's a big shift where you're why. And you know what? Woodcroft needs to stop putting Bouchard out after goals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, that's interesting.
But they're playing well. 10, 2, and 3 is good.
Yeah, 10, 2, and 3 is great.
Since the All-Star break,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they played.
You know, they're 2-1-1.
Like crap, right? But there's 2-1-0, and hey, I'll take it, right? You know, as you said, 5 and 8 games, 5 points in 5 points in 4 games, 8 possible points.
Yeah. Detroit was off and on that game, right? Carter Hart was unbelievable. We got beat by a better goalie. Yeah. Ottawa was a decent night, and Montreal might have been one of the worst games I've seen them play in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and credit to Montreal. They came out flying, I thought.
Credit to Edmonton. When they want to play like dog shit, they are dog shit.
Yeah, there's that too. There's that too, for sure.
I mean, honestly, here, let me look at the game summary. When you get beat by, here it is, there's
Basile.
Yeah. When Alex Azil, Raphael Harvey Pinard, Christian Dvorak, Evgeny Dadonov, Jonathan Drouin, and Jake Allen beat you, you didn't have your best night.
No, they haven't had a good game since the All-Star break. Like, I didn't even think the Ottawa game was particularly strong.
It was okay,
it was okay, but
you scored 6 goals. It's hard to criticize, but
I'll tell you one thing. McDavid almost had the goal of the decade in Montreal. Like, it's going through 4 guys from the hash marks into the goal, and then
enter the cheat code again.
Oh, unbelievable! But here, I'm glad you brought up a couple things. Foegele, for one, healthy scratching this guy and bringing him back into the lineup once in a while is the answer.
Hey.
That's the answer to making this guy a productive player. And so, you know, having a guy like Foegele as a depth guy, that's a hell of a thing, right? Because we've known forever that he's streaky. Expensive for a streaky guy like his, but when he goes out and he has a good game, he's noticeable out there, and he's
good in the playoffs. That's all that matters.
And I love the fact that when he's coming back fired up. It'll be a shame assuming that Puljujarvi gets moved when Yamamoto comes off of IR, and we can talk about that. I'm a little bit sick of that conversation, but we can talk.
Maybe Yamo's the one that's moved.
Maybe Yamo's moved. Who knows? But I like this Puljujarvi Foegele in-out scenario. I think the two of them seemingly come in playing better games, you know, when they've had some time off. And maybe that develops, you know, if Puljujarvi ends up staying, maybe that develops him into a better player. Maybe that develops Foegele into a better player. I don't know, but I can say that for sure that Foegele has been he's been good when he comes back. He seems lit up and ready to go. Costin's back skating, by the way, today, so that's good news. Loving Campbell. How he's been playing. Skinner has been solid all season. In fact, he I thought he left out to dry in the Montreal game. I'm not going to blame him for that. Obviously, there's
800 save percentage.
Yeah, he could have been better, but he's he's still solid. He's positionally solid. He's going to continue to do what he does and continue to mature as a goalie. And I think he's going to be a great goalie for the Oilers, moving forward. Campbell, though, we're seeing what we've wanted to see from the start of the season. It looks like he's got his confidence back. Maybe he's going at the right time, right? Like, down the stretch. Draisaitl, 100%. It's got to be something going on with him. And I said this before, he plays, which everybody knows, he plays reserved when he's injured. And he, we're talking about guys with the injury bug. Draisaitl's 100% guy that's got the injury bug. Difference between him and most guys in the league is he plays through it. Let's hope it's not too serious. I think he's been injured pretty much all season, it seems. At some point you got to figure, and you might be onto something, Dash. It might be a big time surgery coming up, right? And so if you're worried about, which I think most fans are, making it to the Cup this year versus other years, maybe that's something that you have to take into consideration. And if Holland knows that, right, knows that something's going on with Draisaitl, which in fact he would know, I'm sure he knows.
He probably talks to the doctors.
Yeah.
Be advised.
Then maybe you do make a big blockbuster move that you wouldn't make any other year, because you might be, who knows, he could be without Draisaitl for half a season or something while he recovers from a major surgery, if that's where it's headed. And it just feels to me like he's been injured all year, and we know he was injured during the playoffs. He hasn't seemed 100%, all season. There's been stretches where he's looked good. He left for a couple games and he came back. He looked good then, and then again seemed injured or something. Anyway,
at the end of last year, there was a few times he took his glove off on the ice and he was all taped up in his wrist.
Yeah. There's shit going
like
on.
Like a wrist or ribs or hip or
and
something.
And he plays that kind of game, right? Like he's
a wrecking ball.
I mean, he's not, I just feel he's just the player to me that never gets enough credit in this league for the stuff he does when he's on. Although he started to, for sure. Bouchard, we talk about Bouchard. Talk about him as a potential trade piece in anything. This will be the first time I'll say it, but I'm all right with that. I like Bouchard. But if the trade is to get better on D for a guy like Carlson, I'm all right with Bouchard going the other way. And this is maybe the first time I'd ever even consider that. And it has a lot to do with, I just thought Bouchard would be further along defensively by this point in his career. He's had moments where he's been, decent. But I think Broberg is seemingly maturing as he goes. Like, he just continues to get better. And Bouchard, we know he's an offensive talent. Like, there's no doubt. In fact, if he got lots of time on the power play, I have no doubt he'd be putting up the points on the power play, right? And somehow Bouchard has this knack of, he can get around 3 or 4 players somehow, and it just doesn't seem like he's stick handling because he's got that big long stick, and he gets it done. I like him as a player. I just wish he'd be further along defensively. And so, if that's what it takes for the Oilers to make the next step, I'm all right with that, given the fact that we've got Broberg coming up and Desharnais coming up. It is a big ask, but I'm all right with that. And then
23 years old, 156 career games, right-handed unicorn, offensive defenseman that could skate the puck and pass the puck. I'm not.
But he's got to score more than he lets in, right?
But your key thing you said there was, he's a -1 for his career. I mean, he's not a. It's just like I said, he's got that Koskinen type of when it backfires, it really backfires. Like his radar for danger is just. I don't know if it's a hockey IQ thing or if it's I just think I have all the time in the world to make whatever play I need to do because I'm Evan effing Bouchard, and right, I dominated junior. I'm the most productive junior defenseman in the history of the CHL, which I'm not even kidding. It's him and Drew Doughty.
Oh yeah,
so,
no, he's
right. Like when you walk through junior hockey, like it's easy, right? Do you just develop this habit of it's always been easy? I can always make the play at the last second. Whereas in the NHL, you lose so much of that timing. And really, a guy doesn't figure it out until about 200 career games, and he's at 156. So I give Bouchard this offseason, and then.
But here's the thing.
See how he fares next
year.
Here's
my point: is I don't want to move Bouchard, but
the key thing you said was in a deal for Karlsson. I know.
Yeah. In a deal where I think it makes a difference, I would move Bouchard. Would you move Bouchard over Broberg, I guess, is the big question, because one of those guys is probably going to have to go if you want a deal breaker, right?
I'd move Bouchard over Broberg, I think, at this point, and I'm crazy that I'm saying that, but that's just...
Yeah, I feel crazy.
Maybe that's recency bias, too. Maybe that's recency bias, because Bouchard's tailed off and Broberg's look really good. That said, if you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, like if Jeff Aid's listening to this, he just fell on the floor laughing that he said that.
Oh yeah, no, he's dying
better than Bouchard, right? So,
and I'm with you. There's a lot of recency bias there. It's not something I've ever said before. It's not even a way that I've thought. In fact, if you'd brought up Bouchard's name at any point during the season prior to the last couple of weeks, I would have said, get out of here. Don't even talk to me, because
like if we can move Barry and Kulak instead of either one of those guys,
it's just not going to happen, right? Like Bouchard or Broberg's probably going to have to go, one of the two.
Too. If Karlsson's going, Barry has to go too, just for the money to work.
Yeah.
Or Fogle.
Aid has now checked in. He does say right defense are so difficult to find, in quotes. So let's keep trading them off. Yeah, I mean, look, the same thing. No,
say something would make me feel ridiculous.
In the fact that he says that, though, right? Like you could go back though to this moment in time in Ken Holland's career and say, you held on to the right-handed defenseman for what? So that you could wallow in, conference finals for the rest of the, NHL, right? Like that's the so at some point you got to make some decisions. They're not all going to be easy, right? And any of those statements, if they're an absolute type of statement, it's just the wrong way to think about making a trade. You either make a trade to make the next step, or you don't make a trade, right?
You need the Bouchard Broberg money to work, though. Like you need those ELCs, right? That's why it's got to be Kulak or Barry or the first. Like
it's not going to be though. Like
I don't want either one of those two to be part of any deal, to be honest.
No, I agreed there. I don't.
Right. And what did you say? Was that before the show? Which GM drafted which defenseman out of those two?
Well, Chia drafted Bouchard and Holland drafted Broberg. So Low Tide did a great article on The Athletic about this, and he did bring up that which I believe. I think Low Tide's onto it, which is, if Holland's going to favor somebody, it's likely to be Broberg. But you know what, Aid, you're 100% right, and at the same time, you're 100% wrong, because at some point you got to make tough decisions if you're going to make the next step, and you don't want to be the guy that said, "Well, I didn't trade him because I don't want to trade right-handed D-men," right? Like if you're that guy, then maybe you don't.
That are 23, right? That have 156 career games under their belt, that were the most prolific offensive defenseman in the CHL history. Let's not cut Jeff too short here.
No, I'm just saying, if at the end of the day, that's what you're holding ground on because you don't want it, I don't think it's worth it, right? Like you can't have an absolute statement if you're trying to make a move that's going to that you think will make the difference in your organization, right?
Erik Karlsson's a difference maker.
Yeah,
So,
he is.
that's.
So I love Bouchard. Like, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying it's the first time in my following Bouchard with the Oilers that I'd consider it.
Yeah.
And part of that has to do with I just don't see the maturity on the defensive side. Now, I do think some of that has to do with Barry being there. Like, if
McCurdy talked us into it, let's be honest.
Yeah. I think if Barry, if maybe, yeah.
Cleft
if you haven't checked out, Bruce McCurdy did a great article for us on Heavy Hockey, comparing Broberg to Clefbaum, and pretty compelling argument, I might add. Yeah. All right. So there, Aid's in. He said if it's for Karlsson, yeah, of course it's a must to exchange Bouchard. All right, Aid, we can agree on something.
Yeah.
There.
Bruce McCurdy and Jeff Aid have something in common. They can generally both talk me into something.
Oh, yeah. Well, Aid and I have a good history of not always agreeing on everything. And so, yeah, I do love to get him riled up.
That's not tough.
Because like any good fan, there are certain times, Aid, where he's got his Sabres glasses on. I know we all try to be objective, but there are times when we can each have our. I have my Oilers glasses
Jeff's
on.
one of the most objective fans I know. I think he's. How do you be a Sabres fan
and not be objective?
Sabres colored glasses, like they haven't made the playoffs in 11
years. I
mean, what color are those glasses?
You're calling me a Flames fan for maybe being all right with the conference final. Aid's all right with not going to the playoffs for an 11th straight year. So
I did read the article.
Yeah. Where does that put you? You got to have Sabres colored glasses to be all right with that.
It's true.
So, yeah. He says he doesn't get riled up, but all good. You know, we love you, Jeff, and we'll get you back on the show soon enough. And if you haven't checked
all the punctuation in that post proves how riled up he is.
That's right. And it's so guys, make sure you Jack Ryanson says let's trade Dry to Buffalo for Darlene.
Takes on,
man. All right, we're off the rails here. Let's talk about
Darlene's the next Karlsson.
Back
on the rails for you.
I am he says he'll sign Leon in 2025. Now, Jeff, come on. You're starting to sound like a Maple Leafs fan.
Take him off. We don't need that listener. Get off.
Oh man. All right. So we got Oilers in February, and then we'll wrap this up. Oilers are looking at Detroit tomorrow night. And then New York's in town. The new New York Rangers that have Tarasenko. And then Colorado. So they've got Detroit, which I thought, despite beating them 5-2, they got a fast team. They look like the kind of team that might surprise you on any given night. Of course, the Oilers also looked poor that night, but they need to be taken seriously. And then New York and Colorado are two teams that are going to be tough outs. And then Philly, which should be a doozy, I think, with the way that one ended. I'm looking forward to that game, but these four games really scare the shit out of me.
Do they? Hey.
And only because this is we're tight in the playoff race, right? Even despite the last 15 games, I think we want to shore up that divisional spot over the wild card spot. Calgary's still 4 points back?
I haven't checked today.
Yeah, they're 4 points back, which is not a lot. I mean, if they win, they win a couple, we lose a couple over these next four, and it's they're back in the mix. I think this is the time of the season where you need to
5 teams.
Yeah, this is the time of season where you need to make your make that stretch, right? And you need to shore up that divisional spot. You're within. The Oilers seem to have a block when it comes to first place in the division. They've had their chances to get there. It seemed to, always pull out a real poor game when it really matters. But these 4 games to me, are huge. Not that, the rest of February isn't big. But I just think the timing of these games with where they are in the schedule, you even go 500 in these games and you could see yourself sitting on the precipice of being out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Calgary.
It's been like 35 years since we've won the division.
Has it been that long?
Something like that. Yeah.
Crazy. What scares you most, or what, or how do you feel about these games coming up? Like,
I have mixed feelings. I'll be at the game tomorrow. There's dinner planned with some customers at Braven at the Marriott a little beforehand. So run into some media and stuff there generally beforehand. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And the Oilers have not won a game with me in attendance this year, so I am a little scared about that one. That said, I think it's going to be a really entertaining game against, you said Philly. I think it'll be Detroit. It started getting rough towards the end of that game. Kulak has a date planned, apparently. So I think there'll be a couple of scraps. I think it'll be heated, bringing that road trip momentum and having the home crowd. I think it feels like there hasn't been a game in months. I don't know, there was such a long break over the All-Star break, and then we hit this road trip. There hasn't been a lot of play at home, so I think the crowd's going to be psyched and right into it, and that'll be all right. So it'll see New York. Yeah, I think we'll do okay in these home games, even though we don't generally do well at home. The Colorado game scares me a little bit, and the Philly game scares me a little bit. So,
yeah, the Colorado game. I mean, Colorado obviously is a hell of a team, despite where they're sitting. And they're in a playoff spot as it sits right now. Rangers should be a tough matchup too. Yeah, and if I think there's some good could come out of these 4 games, and obviously if they lay some eggs and some real bad shit in terms of the standings, but if they can take this little stretch and really do something, I think they put the league on notice that this is a team that is going to go for it. And then B, you got Detroit, as you said. Kulak's got a date in the Detroit game. You got Philly, which I think that was that could spill over into this game as well. This is the kind of stretch that really gels a team, especially after what I think is a bad stretch of play since the All-Star break. The only downside, I mean, is Costin was skating. I think you need him in the lineup in terms of toughness. Draisaitl and Kane were both off the ice today. And in terms of Oilers history, you don't know if that's legit flu. I mean, and Durst is saying, both maintenance days, different stories on them, from flu bug to upper body injury for Dry. And that's the Oilers. Like, a guy has a maintenance day and then tomorrow he's announced as IR, right? So we just don't know. And I think that's every team in the NHL now anyway. It's not just the Oilers that are like that. So there's some parts of this that are concerning, but I think if the Oilers can, if they've got everybody healthy that comes into these games, they play mean and tough, which I can't believe we're saying that about the Oilers, because at the beginning of the season, I'd say this was not the team that I thought we had, right? But you add in Desharnais, you add in Kane, you add in Costin, and you've got some big guys that can finally do some damage, right? And Draisaitl, you can add him to that mix, right? Like he's a nasty player, right? But if any of those guys are out, Desharnais obviously, I think, in. But if any of those guys are out, that changes the dynamic of this team. a fair bit. So it scares me. These 4 games scare me. But if you can get out of February in a playoff spot, I think this team's cooking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the team's going to be there. I think, and over the next little while, though, this is the key stretch. The only thing, as I said, it'd be who's healthy and who's not. So let's break this down. There's 7 games left in February. At last week, we were all pretty close. I think you said 3-0-1 for those 4 games leading up.
Yep.
I said 3-1-0. We were all pretty darn close. I think Morris said 3-0-1 as well. Yeah. Yeah, and it's exactly as we thought. The Oilers were likely to lose one of the 2 matinees, and they did. They did just that. So let's break down these 4, then we'll do the post game against Philly, whether you're on with me or not. We'll see who's on. But if I had to guess, and I would say, I think the Oilers will beat Detroit, and I think they'll beat New York, and they'll lose one of the. I think this is another 3-1 stretch for me. I think they'll lose either Colorado or Philly. One of those, Colorado would probably be the more likely of the 2, I think, if they were to lose. But I think the Oilers can come out of this 4-game stretch 3-1. Your thoughts?
I'll go 2-1-1, just like the last 4. I think we'll beat Detroit. New York's a coin toss for me. Maybe I'll call the Rangers an overtime loss. Colorado's a loss. Philly's a win.
Yeah, Philly. I think they'll beat Philly this time for sure, and I think they'll beat Detroit again. I think that Detroit game, despite it being 5-2, was a lot closer than a 5-2 score.
It was, yeah, for sure.
And
we just didn't start playing until the second period.
Yeah, and I think that's good, right, for the Oilers to play these teams, in Philly and in Detroit, and then. They're coming back home. They're going to look at these guys and not take it for granted that they're, this is a scheduled win, right? I hope they change their outlook. A lot depends on what we hear. Glenn Ma's listening in. He said Kane was visiting Alexander First Nation today, so I don't think it's injury related for him missing practice today. There's no doubt Kane probably needs maintenance days more than anybody. Dropping the gloves there. That's pretty good little scrap. I can't believe he's even playing today, let alone scrapping today.
Yeah, taking face-offs with that wrist,
Yeah. All right. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Anything we've missed?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, that's not a bad show. We're well over an hour, which we always say. I think before we started, I said let's try to keep it to 45 minutes today. So being a half hour over that's not so bad.
And what did I say?
Yeah.
I said name me a conversation that you and I have ever kept under an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in tonight. The YouTube conversation was great. Usual suspects and some new ones in the mix was good. Thanks for tuning in on Twitter. I saw lots of people varying times on Twitter tonight. And of course, we're on Twitch and Facebook Live. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate that. Again, and you'll see on my Twitter timeline notes about the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, some awareness tweets. If you can, I ask you to please retweet those, like them, do that. I think awareness is key to this, the challenges that people are facing as far as sexual assault goes. And there's more to it. The definition of sexual assault has changed drastically over the years. Includes a number of different things. So check that out. Check the tweets out. Read them. Don't just retweet and like them. Read the articles in that. It's been eye-opening for me.
Pretty staggering statistics in there.
It is, yeah. And there's there's lots to know, but I think that's a big part of it. Of course, that's who we're promoting or fundraising for the Heavy Hockey Showdown, which is on March 4th in Edmonton. And still lots of tickets for the after party. Well, not lots, but there are a few tickets left for the after party and watch party, which is going to be at First Round downtown, starting at about 4:30. We're going to watch the Jets versus the Oilers, and lots of great silent auction items up. Dash with his best buddy Leon Draisaitl got a signed Leon Draisaitl jersey. We've got care of Oilers Nation, great guys over there. Gave us a signed Darnell Nurse jersey, which is awesome. And Slavo, the sculpture guy around Edmonton, he's donated some jewelry. There's wine baskets. There's Sherwood Park Crusaders season tickets in that mix. There's so many different little things. There's a canoe trip in there. I'm gonna miss a whole bunch of things, but anyway, all of that to say is, which is never a big surprise, Edmonton and Oilers fans have come out to really support this. I want to say we're at about $6,000 raised already, which is not too bad. There's 18 days left to go, so I think we can make that 10,000 cash up before the game. And so if you want to know how to donate, you can either do the QR code up in the top left, or thank you, or you can just go to canadahelps.com or .org, I think it is, and go find a fundraiser, type in Heavy Hockey, pick your favorite player, and then hit the donate button. Do $5, $10, $15, $25, whatever. Do $1,000 if you got it in your budget, would be great. Do that. That's great. And go from there. And we still got 2 player spots left. I know, Dash, you had a couple of folks that were interested. Maybe you get those filled soon. But we got a couple player spots. We did the draft, so if you're playing and you don't know where you're playing at, which team you're on, then you can reach out to me at Oilers Live on Twitter. Now, as I do every week, and you know what? I got Dash on every week, it seems. I mean, this is becoming the segment of my show, which I'm starting to regret the most. I let my guest have the last word. And I put myself on mute. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Check out heavyhockey.com. Lots of great articles. Follow me on Twitter at Oilers Live or on Instagram at Oilers Live. Follow Dash on Twitter at Dash in the Park. Thanks. Have a great night. Dash, you are up, sir.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate this platform as always. Having the ear of the boss and the head honcho at Heavy Hockey, who's always so humble and coy, that he's forgot to mention in all of this that the episode of Hockey News Money and Power comes out, and he hasn't even told anybody that in the broadcaster category he makes 15th right there with Cassie Campbell and Kelly Rudy, which is fitting. Congratulations, Michael. I just wanted to take this time to, bring a little bit of love to the Heavy Hockey team and make sure everybody knew that you're getting your props out there, right? We got Lotsburg basically is our magic 8 ball, and Friesen is getting retweeted by Sportsnet every couple of days, and you getting Upper Deck cards and covers of Money and Power, and big things at Heavy Hockey here, big things. So thanks for having me on as always, buddy. Congratulations on the magazine. Really proud of you. Thanks as always for the time and chatting hockey. You know that you are my favorite person to chat hockey with. And with that, good night, everybody.